Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my presentation called Instructional Illuminators, Scoring Rubrics for Speaking Skills. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Nara Avtandilyan, and I am a lecturer at Community College of Qatar. This presentation is devoted to my beloved father, who is in my thoughts and prayers. So the presentation will proceed as follows. I will introduce the rationale of the research and explain the basic concepts of scoring rubrics. Then I will discuss why it is beneficial to involve students in the assessment process and why rubrics are appealing for teachers and students. I will report findings of the study and conclude with a discussion of the overall picture that emerges from the findings. So the assessment of language learners is of growing importance in English teaching and applied linguistics. Speaking skills are an important part of the curriculum in language teaching, and this makes them an important object of assessment as well. While there has been a considerable body of work undertaken on assessing the writing abilities of, language learners, the issues surrounding the assessment of learners' speaking abilities are still emerging. Consequently, research on scoring rubrics for spoken assessment is tremendously important. Such research will help us to better understand oral assessment. Thus, it is the purpose of this study to investigate teachers' and students' use of and perception of scoring rubrics for speaking skills. Specifically, the questions which guided this study were: what are the teachers' and students' perceptions of the use of rubrics as a speaking assessment aid? And can students use rubrics to self-assess accurately? A better understanding of students' perception of educational innovations like rubrics can provide key insights into understanding the teaching-learning relationship. These results could also be used to design more effective assessment tools that takes into consideration students' perceptions. So let's unpack the rubric step by step. Alternative assessment or authentic assessment has gained popularity in the field of foreign language teaching. And I can say that it has taken on new effective goals in which personal growth of the learner is becoming increasingly important. The main purposes of alternative assessment include assessing students beyond the traditional testing and encouraging them to participate in open discussions about standards and criteria of successful achievements so that they can make informed plans for future study. How many times have you heard this from students? I don't really understand what we were supposed to do for this project, or what's the point of this assignment anyway? Or, teacher, why didn't I get an A on this presentation? I worked very hard on it. It's not my fault I didn't get good grades. So having a good rubric in place will help you solve all of these issues and more. But first, what is a rubric and what does it look like? And here is what it looks like. A rubric is a matrix. On the left side of the matrix lists criteria for the expected performance. Across the top is the rating scale, which can be words or points range, which provides values to determine the quality of performance for each criterion. Indicators are written each box of the matrix, providing examples for each level of performance. Andrade defines the rubric as a scoring tool that lists the criteria for a piece of work and one that articulates gradations of quality for each criterion, from excellent to poor. Generally, rubrics specify the level of performance expected for several levels of quality. These levels of quality may be written as descriptive ratings or as numerical scores, which are then added up to form a total score associated with a grade. According to Moskal, scoring rubrics provide specific ways to classify and judge student products or behaviors into categories that vary on a continuum from unacceptable to outstanding. They can be used to sort out the varying degrees of achievement in any product or behavior. For example, essays, research reports, portfolios, oral presentations, or performances. Tyranny and Simon support the use of scoring rubrics, emphasizing the fact that they are useful in assessment for learning because detailed criteria are delineated and used to discriminate among levels of student performance. Most rubrics consist of objectives, performance characteristics, and points or scores that indicate the degree to which the objectives were made. So let's see what are the characteristics of the good rubric. A good rubric must have a list of specific criteria to be rated. This should be unidimensional, so students and raters know exactly what the expectations are. The scoring scale should include 3 to 5 levels of performance. A 4-point scale is preferable for most users. There should be clear gradations of quality based on the degree to which a criterion standard has been met. These gradations should include specific descriptions of what constitutes excellent, good, fair, or advanced, basic, below, or whatever your levels of performance are. So effective rubrics use a lot of descriptive language. The more specificity used, the easier it is for raters to assign a score, and the easier it is for students to verify and understand their scores. The difference in quality between a rating of 4 and a rating of 3 should be the same difference in quality from a rating of 3 to a rating of 2. All descriptors should model and reflect consistent levels of continuity. So as for reliability, a good rubric should be able to be used by various raters and have them all arrive at same scores. In other words, it should lend itself in inter-rater reliability. Reliability also refers to time. For example, if you are scoring your 100th presentation on a speaking task, the rubric should support your rating in the same way you rated the first presentation of speaking task. And as for validity, a rubric with good validity rates what it was intended to rate and scores what is essential to the assignment, rather than what is easy for the eye to see or simply for the teacher to grade. A well-done rubric is both an instructional tool and an assessment tool. So let's see the types of rubrics. There are 2 major types of rubric, analytic and holistic. I will just describe them very shortly because we don't have much time, I think, to go into details. Analytic scale offers a separate scale for various dimensions, while holistic scale offers several dimensions together. Discussing an analytic rubric, Richardson states that the opinion that analytic scoring breaks down the objective of final product into component parts, and each part is scored independently. In this case, the total score is the sum of the rating for all the parts that are being evaluated. The use of holistic rubrics is probably more appropriate when performance, task requires students to create some sort of response and where there is no definitive correct answer. The teacher scores separate individual parts of the product or performance first, and then sums the individual scores to obtain a total score. However, even though holistic scoring is often more efficient, analytical scoring systems generally provide more detailed information that may be useful in planning and improving instruction and communicating with students. Now, we are going to delve a little deeper into how and why a rubric works. So rubrics should be introduced to the students at the very beginning of the project unit by either presenting the rubric to the class or collaborating with the students to structure the rubric. This will allow students to understand the criteria for assessment before they start the project. Negotiable contracting is an approach that involves students in the assessment process. Reading or listening to a teacher's expectations is very different for a student than creating and accomplishing his or her goals. The purpose of inviting students to develop their own evaluation structure is to improve their motivation, interest, and performance in the project. As students' overall participation in creation of rubrics increases, they are likely to excel in learning. Once students have invested a significant amount of time, effort, energy into a project, they naturally want to participate in deciding how it will be evaluated. As Wiggins suggests, the art of negotiable contracting consists of giving students shared ownership in their own learning. Students themselves can be involved in the assessment process through both peer and self-assessment. A major agreement for involving students in self and peer assessment is that it helps them to develop the ability to make judgments, in particular about themselves and their work. Self-assessment or self-evaluation can be an important and effective tool in student growth. As for peer evaluation, it can be a useful and valuable tool, in helping students to develop their critical skills and insights into the evaluation process. By making a critical appraisal of another student's work or performance, students can begin to understand the requirements of the curriculum and the teacher. So in recent years, many educational researchers have noted the instructional benefits of scoring rubrics. Popham noted their potential as instructional illuminators. An opinion expressed by Starr is that rubrics can help students and teachers define quality. For a teacher, it serves as a target for which the student should strive in order to obtain a good grade. The rubric lays out a teacher's expectations on what an exemplary project contains. For a student, rubric offers a platform, from which the student may begin his or her project. With a rubric as a guide, students receive clarity of the assignment and do not feel so overwhelmed by the massiveness of a given project. They are extremely effective for many classroom activities, including assessments of essays, oral presentations, group projects, and other assignments. So let's see why the rubrics are appealing to the students. Andrade pinpoints a few basic reasons that rubrics appeal to teachers and students. They are useful as tools for teaching and assessment. They help students become more thoughtful judges of the quality of their work and those of their peers. Rubrics also save teachers time spent on evaluating student work. They accommodate heterogeneous classes and they are easy to use. The best argument for using rubrics is that they often result in improvement in the quality of students' work. So I'll share the results of this study with you. This research set out to investigate teachers' and students' use of and perception of scoring rubrics for speaking skills within the tertiary context. The research has been conducted at one of the universities in a graduate program where I worked previously. For this purpose, scoring rubrics for speaking skills and teachers' and students' perceptions of the rubrics are investigated by means of a student and teacher questionnaire, as well as teacher interviews. Students were provided with a scoring rubric, and after doing an oral presentation for their class, they completed a survey on their use and perception of the rubrics. Teachers completed a questionnaire and participated in the interviews. The teacher and student questionnaires were analyzed using descriptive statistics through SPSS. Interview data were analyzed via a constant comparison process. Students also used the rubrics to self-assess and peer evaluate, their presentation. A correlation was run to determine the relationship of the student's self-assessment grade with the teacher's evaluation grade of the presentation. The study shows that in general, students and teachers have positive attitudes towards the use of scoring rubrics. So the percentage study revealed that about 94% of students used the rubrics to prepare for their presentation, and 83% think that the rubrics helped them to prepare better. The results of this study are consistent with some of the research findings and discussions in the literature on scoring rubrics. Many researchers argue that a rubric is a working guide for students and teachers, usually handed out before the assignment begins, in order to get students to think about the criteria on which their work will be judged. The participants, almost 96% liked rubrics, mostly for the way in which rubrics were able to guide them while preparing for the presentation. However, a few students, almost 15%, felt that rubrics have some limitations because of their limited criteria. So students were asked to give short answers to the 3 questions related to their perceptions of positive and negative aspects of using the rubrics. Typical comments in relation to having the rubric while preparing for the presentations, where you can see them on your screen. I will give you a minute to read them on your own. Okay, I will move now to the correlation study. I hope you managed to read at least some of them. So the correlation study that investigated the relationship between the student's self-assessment grade of the presentation and the teacher's evaluation grade of the same presentation showed that some of the students underestimated their speaking skills, their speaking abilities of English, while using scoring rubrics for the presentation. This may be because they had limited, experience of assessing themselves or their peers through scoring rubrics in their educational institutions before coming to the graduate program. The respondents' attitude and approach to the scoring rubric and self-assessment procedures may also have influenced their answers. Maybe some of them thought that their self-assessment grade might influence their teacher's evaluation of them. So teachers of this study confirmed that rubrics helped to be aware of their own, progress, which is a path towards autonomous learning. According to the teachers, when students do self-assessment from the very beginning of the course, they become intellectually and morally independent in their learning. As the interviews revealed, teachers have to overcome many things while assessing students' oral performances. However, when they use rubrics to evaluate the students' oral speech, they try to be objective and to follow the rubrics. An opinion expressed by STAR is that rubrics offer teachers objective methods to evaluate students' works. Rubrics provide teachers with more instructive comment about their strengths and areas in need of improvement. I think I have little time left. So in concluding this study, I just wish to highlight 3 salient issues which have emerged. These issues carry implications for teaching and learning. Firstly, it is apparent that the rubrics are powerful tools for both teaching and assessment, which can improve student performance. Secondly, it was revealed that through the analysis of the open-ended questions of the student questionnaire, rubrics are useful since they help students become more thoughtful judges of the quality of their own and others' work. As the interviewed teacher stated, peer assessment and especially self-assessment is likely to increase a student's sense of responsibility for their own work. Lastly, findings show that teachers are not against training in assessment. Teacher training should therefore give due emphasis to aspects of language assessment. Such professional preparation would help equip teachers with the competence they need to effectively and confidently carry out their duties. Competence and confidence will invariably enhance perceptions of their professionalism. This research showed that, in short, like to sum up, the research showed that scoring rubrics may be a positive addition to a teacher's methods, as they can provide a meaningful way to plan for and interpret student learning, and that the students need training in using scoring rubrics while preparing for specific tasks. In future research, it would be interesting to investigate the possible involvement, of students as participants in creation of scoring rubrics. Another interesting direction of further research might be to investigate the possible impact of student self and peer assessment through scoring rubrics on teaching techniques, classroom activities, and curriculum development. This will enable the researcher to show the positive role of scoring rubrics in providing students with standards and expectations that they can use to evaluate their performance while completing an assignment. So there is clearly room for more extensive research in the local setting and other settings, including similar studies on a larger scale. Accordingly, my discussion of the present findings remains essentially exploratory period. In spite of this, I consider that my study helped us to understand the criteria and the use of scoring rubrics in the field of the oral assessment. Thank you for your attention and for attending my sessions. I would be happy to answer any questions if you have. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your TESOL conference face-to-face or online.